Ruchira Gupta, an Emmy Award-winning journalist, a professor at New York University, and a lifelong activist against sex trafficking, and a former journalist, formerly with The Telegraph, as well as the Business India magazine, and Venkatesh Ramakrishnan, managing director of the IDEM website, formerly with Frontline magazine. And today we're talking about the consecration of the Ram Lalla idol in Ayodhya. Even as we speak, the ceremonies are on. It will take a couple of hours for them to be completed by this afternoon. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is doing the honors, of course. And the reason I have both of you here on this program today is because on the 6th of December, 1992, when the Babri Masjid was demolished to make way for the temple that is coming up on that exact same spot in Ayodhya, both of you were in Ayodhya and you watched the demolition of the masjid. So Ruchira and Venkat, welcome to Awaaz South Asia, and thank you for joining me on this discussion.
Thank you, Jyoti, for including us in your panel.
So Ruchira, I'd like to come to you first. Tell me exactly what happened on the 6th of December, 1992. Where were you? What did you see?
I was on the terrace in the Ram Katha Kunj with L.K. Advani and other BJP leaders. And we were all there as the day began to demolish the mosque. So there was a line of speakers that Pramod Mahajan and Advani decided who would speak first, who would speak second, who would speak third. And I was actually sitting next to Advani and listening in to everything that was going on. And while they were planning this, there were also sort of sloganeering going on the mic. And it was being led by people like Uma Bharti, who was saying ki ek dhakka aur do, Babri Masjid tod do. And also she was sort of inciting the masculinity of the crowd. So she was talking to them saying that, do you know why you've come here? You've come to reclaim your manhood. Are you wearing bangles? Let go of your bangles, become the men that you are. And the crowd was loving that because the crowd was mostly male dominated. And they were literally, as she was raising the slogans, I could see they were feeling a new sense of identity for themselves. And in the meantime, 2 or 3 people climbed on top of the domes. And Advani told Pramod Mahajan that better tell those boys to come down because बम्बई से कोई आया है काम करने के लिए और उनको चोट लग जाएगी. So that was my first surety that everything had been planned to bring down the mosque. And so Mahajan went to the mic.
No, I'm saying when बम्बई से कोई आया है काम करने के लिए का क्या मतलब हुआ?
यही मस्जिद तोड़ने के लिए कि उनको चोट लग जाएगी जब मस्जिद गिरेगी. So he actually told Mahajan to say that. And Mahajan went on the mic and got someone to make announcements to say that. And then soon the boys were on the terrace with us. So I was one of the few journalists who was on the terrace with the leaders. The other journalists were scattered all around this area around the mosque. And also what I saw visually from the terrace was quite frightening. The entire area around the mosque was full of saffron. And there were people who were chanting, who had swords in their hands, who had all kinds of implements in their hands, not like sadhus that I had grown up seeing, who were quite kind of benign and they had musical instruments in their hand. This time I saw people with like weapons, spears and things like that, and axes, and a very militant crowd. And they were also, the frenzy was being whipped up. So I could see a sea of saffron. I could see the mosque on a little bit to our left. And there was a trench which had been dug around the mosque. And people were teeming into the mosque with all kinds of things. And I also saw ropes being put around the mosque and, people using pickaxes to the foundation around the mosque where there was already a trench. And, I was just trying to take notes. There was Vijay Raje Scindia on the terrace. There was Murli Manohar Joshi on the terrace. Uma Bharti. Sadhvi Ritambara was there on the terrace. And she was one of the people who were the early speakers inciting the mob. And then what happened was that the first dome did come down. And we were all kind of taken aback because, we are so used to growing up with these old solid stone built and these are monuments which are historical monuments, right? They're preserved by the archaeological survey of India. So we are used to thinking of them as solid structures which will be timeless.
Mhm.
And to see it come down was kind of a shock that this kind of archaeological structure is actually coming down.
Mm.
The timelessness of it went away in a second. And I was taken aback, of course, and I could see there was a little bit of jubilation on the terrace. You know, people began to hug each other and say, "Kaam shuru ho gaya." And in fact, Vijay Raje Scindia started crying, and someone picked up Vijay Raje Scindia, Murli Manohar Joshi, in his godi and did a little bit of a jig. And Manoj Raghuvanshi and some journalists also started giving out sweets. So I thought, because I was a trained journalist in the Telegraph, we had been taught two things.
Mhm.
One was you have to go to the spot, and the second is that you have to talk to the people who are actually doing something and not depend on secondary sources. So I
Mhm.
had got a sense of what the leaders were doing and how they were encouraging the crowds to break the mosque. But I also wanted to go and talk to the car sevaks who were actually doing the demolition.
Right.
So I decided to go. And I walked down the terrace. It was just a one-storied house, and the mosque was just a few meters away. So I walked there through the trench into the Garbhagriha, it is now as it is now called,
Yeah.
inside the under the second dome, the middle dome.
Right.
And it was packed like body to body and all men, right? And I was like in jeans and a loose shirt, and it was quite hot. It was past noon, and I put a sort of a hanky on my head. And when I went in, suddenly, I was like in very crowded areas like movie theaters or whatever, melas. Suddenly, I was in the middle of this mob, my body being pressed on all sides,
Mhm.
and people groping me. And someone said, "Oh, she must be a Muslim because they saw a hanky on my head." And I didn't look like them. I wasn't in saffron. I didn't have any religious accessories on my body. And someone tried to strangle me. And they began to say, maar do, Musalman ki aulad. And, I couldn't get the words out to say, my name is Ruchira Gupta, I'm a journalist, nothing. I was split seconds away from death, even as I was being groped.
Mhm.
And it was and I was terrorized. And just then I heard someone say that yahan nahi, bahar, something, because they said this is a sacred place. They dragged me out, and I was in that trench which they had dragged out. My shirt buttons they pulled my shirt buttons off. But I had interviewed a man 2 days before that from Bihar,
Mhm.
and he was from Bihar, and he was also a car sevak, and he noticed what was happening, and he jumped into the trench to get me out. He started telling these men, "What are you doing? She's from my village, and I know her. She's a journalist, and she's not Muslim." They hit him also while he was trying to drag me. His leg started bleeding, but he pulled me out. The moment sort of fizzled away, and
Right.
he asked where I wanted to go. And I said, I want to go to the terrace where the leaders are. I want to tell them what's happening. I couldn't imagine that they would be so irresponsible that they would allow attacks on journalists and
Mhm.
women.
Okay.
So he took me back to the terrace. And there, Advani was standing, watching the domes come down through his binoculars, and there were houses burning
Mhm.
around him. And the second dome also came down. And so I went to him and I said, "आप माइक पे अनाउंस करवाइए, औरतों को अटैक कर रहे हैं, जर्नलिस्टों को अटैक कर रहे हैं, देखिए मेरे साथ क्या हुआ." तो ही सेड कि तुम्हारे साथ जो हुआ भूल जाओ, बहुत ऐतिहासिक दिन है, कुछ मीठा खाओ. And his guard tried to give me something sweet. I said, "I don't want sweet, I want protection."
Hmm.
तो फिर वो मुझे he gave me the binoculars. तो I said, "आप क्या देख रहे हैं बाइनोक्यूलर से?" तो
Mhm.
ही सेड, "मुसलमान खुद अपने घर जला रहे हैं मुआवजे के लिए, झुग्गी झोपड़ीज, लाइक वेरी बेसिक शैंटीज."
Mhm.
तो आई सेड, कोई अपना घर कैसे खुद जला सकता है? तो ही जस्ट इग्नोर्ड माय क्वेश्चन. देन आई सेड कि मुझे अगर घर जाना हो, दिल्ली जाना हो, मैं कैसे जाऊंगी? वहां तो गाड़ियां जला रहे हैं, सब जगह से आग दिख रही है, मुझे अटैक किया. ही डिडंट आंसर. ही वेंट डाउन
Hmm.
to some room, and then he came back, and then he told Mahajan that you must get announcements made on the mic to say कि CRPF आने वाली है, तो सब लोग बेंचेस लगा दें, रास्ते में लेट जाएं, क्योंकि जब तक काम पूरा नहीं होगा उनको मत आने दो. One more dome was left. So I saw the intentionality, I saw the willingness, I saw even the planning
Mhm.
of what happened as this old monument was brought down. And I realized the symbolism of it in that frenzy.
Venkat, can I come to you now and ask you, where were you on the 6th of December, 1992? Did you witness, I mean, you said you did witness the demolition of the masjid. So tell us exactly what you saw at that.
I was in a building called the Manas Bhavan,
Mhm.
on the second floor of a building called the Manas Bhavan. And actually, my story of demolition actually predates December 6th.
Mhm.
Because on November 28th, since I used to work for a fortnightly, I had filed my copy on the forthcoming Karseva, and I had predicted that this masjid is coming down this time and there is a suicide squad ready. The inputs for this were given to me by Vinay Katyar, who was the chief of the Bajrangal at that point of time.
Mhm.
So he had told me that, इस बार तो ढांचा गिर जाएगा नीचे, we will bring it down.
इस बार ढांचा गिर जाएगा.
गिर जाएगा. And he said that it is not like the July. There was a Karseva in July also when they retreated. They had this big show and then finally they retreated. But then, and I also had a friend in the military intelligence of Faisabad at the point of time who said that the number of Karsevaks have grown beyond 2 lakhs. People were living in camps around the Karsevakpuram and in various parts of Ayodhya. So he said, now it will be difficult for any security agency to control this mob if they decide to bring it down. So on the 6th itself, I was at Manas Bhavan in the building opposite, where of course you got a good view of the Babri Masjid. And of course, there even before that, by July 1992, the Kalyan Singh government had demolished a few mandirs around because 2.77 acres of land outside the Babri Masjid were they had kind of taken it over. The state government had taken it over to start building the start the construction of the so-called Ram Mandir at that point of time. I think the plan is drastically changed now. It is no longer the old plan that they have.
Right.
So yeah. So these mandirs had been demolished, and then from Manas Bhavan you had a good view of the Babri Masjid. But then, as Ruchira was saying, even after from the time the assault on the mosque started, journalists were being attacked, and some of these people knew that since I have been covering Ayodhya since 1986. I have been a regular, and I knew a lot of people. There were some friends, some foes among the Hindutva brigade. So some of them told me that to watch out. They're going to target you also. They're going to get you because they don't want any evidence. They don't want the journalists to get any concrete evidence of what's happening here. So I saw that. I saw from a distance how Ruchira was being attacked, and how other journalists were being attacked.
You saw from a distance how Ruchira was also being attacked?
Yeah. Because
you saw that?
Ruchira had gone. Ruchira had gone into the structure. No, she had moved into the structure, and so I mean, we're all shocked.
You must have seen me being dragged into that trench at that time.
Yeah,
I think that's what you saw.
Yeah. So I mean, journalists were being attacked left, right, and center. Every journalist, anybody with a camera was target. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
And also women. The point is, didn't help Ruchira being a woman that day. I mean,
no. In fact, they were enjoying groping and attacking. It was kind of a sadistic kind of thing which was going on, and the whole atmosphere was toxic masculinity, which I didn't have the vocabulary then to describe. But the slogans were also reclaim your masculinity, mard ho ki nahi, chudiyan pehne ho ki nahi, and also the other slogans were very, very, ek dhakka aur do Babri Masjid tod do. It's almost like rape slogans, right? So these are not easy slogans for a woman to hear.
Yeah. Not just anybody. Yeah. Go ahead, Venkat. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I had almost predicted this demolition on the 28th of November. Of course, the copy was printed on the 5th of December. And Ram, my editor in Frontline at that point of view, thought that the copy was very extreme. I said, I'm a reporter. I'm reporting what I have come to know.
Yeah.
So finally, he carried the story. And then on the 6th evening, when I called him, those days there was no mobile phone. So I got to the Faisabad PCO and then called him and said, I told Ram that I'm sorry that I have been proved right.
Yeah.
And the aftermath, Jyoti, was really terrible because, then I decided to testify
Yeah.
about what had happened to me
that-
and what I had seen
Hmm.
on the terrace. Because, I wanted to explain to people that it was planned and it was intentional and how it had been orchestrated and how a crowd had been brought, which were sort of manipulated into this frenzy. And I saw it with my own eyes. So I went into Bahari Tribunal, I went to the Press Council and also the Liberhans Commission. And 11 lawyers from 11 different front organizations of the BJP and the RSS would question me. Same thing in Liberhans. And they would ask me questions like, where are your scratch marks? Did you do it for publicity? Are you a TV actress? Do you have a lot of male friends? Why do you have male friends?
Mm.
Is there any photograph of any god in your house? You're from Calcutta. Do you smoke cigarettes? Even character assassination.
Right.
And then also that you're a girl from a good family. When they treated you like this and you say your shirt buttons had come off, how could you go to a big leader like Advani in that state? So I said the shame was not mine, the shame was the perpetrators. And also they asked me that which religion do you believe? So finally in Liberhans I said I believe in the Bhagavad Gita, in which Krishna tells Arjun that he must battle all evil.
Venkat, your experience, Ruchira's recount or account of of those days is sounds horrifying. Did you also testify before the Liberhan Commission and the others?
I did. In fact, I testified before the Liberhan Commission. Also, I testified in the CBI case
Mhm.
on the demolition. And I think Ruchira also did. See, in fact, I think among the testimonies, my testimony, Ruchira's testimony, and Praveen Jain's testimony, because Praveen Jain, the cameraman with Indian Express at that point of time,
Yeah.
he had seen a mock,
A rehearsal one day
rehearsal.
before. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had, I think he was with Outlook at that point of view. He was not with,
Indian
he was
Express.
with Outlook. Yeah.
Okay.
So he had got these visuals, and then of course he had shared with us. And I think our three testimonies were very, very clear and very straightforward. And the planning, because since I knew this from November 28th onwards, that suicide squads were ready. What
You say,
Advani must have.
Venkat, when you say suicide squads, what do you mean by that? That people were willing to die in order to bring the masjid down?
Yeah, because I think what Advani must have been referring to when these boys got up and he said that chot lag jayega. I think they had studied the structure. In fact, Champak Rai was the man, the current secretary of the trust.
Right.
Champak Rai was the man who was deputed to study the structure, and he had sent people inside the Babri Masjid and studied the structure, looked at the vulnerable spots, and from my own understanding and my own sources, I know that even bombs were used to bring it down.
Must have been dynamite.
There was dynamite. Dynamite was
small
used. That
amount
is
of
for sure.
dynamite to bring it down. And
They
I
did
think
bring dynamite.
Yeah, I mean Praveen, I think also testified before the Liberhans Commission, and I've seen his pictures, which are quite astounding. And I think they were must have been part of the evidence, because he talks about ropes being used to.
But the evidence was completely the evidence that we gave was none of that was taken into consideration by any of these investigating teams.
So I want to ask you both this question. Venkat, can I start with you? We hear and we read that L.K. Advani, when he saw people climbing onto the mosque, and then when he saw the mosque come down, and he was filled with a lot of remorse, and he is supposed to have said कि ये जो हो रहा है बहुत बुरा हुआ, and ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए था, because that's the that's what has come down over the years, which is that the senior-most leadership in the BJP felt that what happened was such an extreme step and it should not have happened.
I think it is absolute bunkum. It's a narrative that has been created very deliberately. There is no way I think, because what I know of that day, the first reaction that I have seen from Advani, because I was also in the Manas Bhavan and I was also able to watch the terrace as well as the masjid.
Yeah.
The first reaction that came from him was around 2 o'clock when he asked the Karsevaks to block the roads, burn tires on the roads, and
Exactly.
I was not as close to Advani as Ruchira was, and I did not hear this other thing. But there is no way, there is no remorse. They were all happy. They were all hugging each other, and they were all, extremely celebrating. They were all celebrating.
Yeah.
But the irony, Ruchira, is that today LK Advani has not even been invited to the consecration of the idol of Ram Lalla in Ayodhya. But Venkat, let me ask you, Lalu Prasad Yadav, then Chief Minister of Bihar, who stopped or who had LK Advani's Rath or chariot stopped in Bihar when he was on his journey from Somnath to Ayodhya. And anyway, he had this chariot, sort of his Rath stopped in Bihar. Now, Lalu has said yesterday that there was much more of there is much more of frenzy today in Ayodhya than there was at the time 35, 32, 33 years ago. What do you make of his comments that, much more this sort of feeling of Hindutva? What do you make of what Lalu said? Do you agree with that?
No, absolutely. See, I've been covering Ayodhya since 1986. And 1 year before I started covering Ayodhya, I had heard from very senior journalists in Faizabad. See, one of the first expeditions that the Hindutva combined, Sangh Parivar, undertook on this Ayodhya issue was in 1985. It was called the Ram Janki Yatra. Mm-hmm. It was a kind of Rath Yatra kind of thing from Sitamarhi, which is supposed to be the birthplace of Sita, to Ayodhya. And the purpose was to come to the Babri Masjid and pledge that they will liberate this place from the clutches of the invaders. I mean, I think what Lalu said is very right, because, in 1985, this Ram Janki Yatra, which started from Sitamarhi, and Ashok Sangal was the leader of that Vishwa Hindu Parishad at that point of time. So he was leading the yatra, and then the objective of the yatra was to come to Ayodhya and go to the Babri Masjid and take a pledge saying that this symbol of invasion of the shame of the invaders' conquest will be removed from here. But as they were approaching Babri Masjid, on the approach route to the Babri Masjid, about 1,000 people of Ayodhya and Faizabad, Hindus, Muslims, Jains, and Sikhs, they stopped them on the way. Some of them apparently had hockey sticks if they had to use it. They said that
I saw those hockey sticks.
So they said that that you go back from here, we have no business here. And these people had to beat a hasty retreat, and they had to go to Sarayu, on the banks of Sarayu, and take the pledge there. So, but then 85 was when they faced this big, big opposition from the people. It was a very concerted, secular, opposition, in the sense, the people who believed in secularism. And if you remember, during those years, even in 1991, Faizabad, of which Ayodhya was also a part, had the MP of the Faizabad was a CPI member.
Mitra Sen Yadav, I remember him very well. Yes.
So the thing is, that it had a syncretic culture. It had a very strong secular foundation. But the Sangh Parivar has worked on this place very systematically. The Ram Janki Yatra was a big reversal for them. So what they did was they entrusted the VHP with the task of conquering the city of Ayodhya bit by bit.
Mhm.
And I remember a very interesting interaction that I had with Mahanta Ramachandra Paramhans, who was the chairman of the first chairman of the Rama Janmabhoomi Trust and also leader of the Digambara Akhada. He used to call himself warrior saint.
Mhm.
He was a wrestler himself, and so he used to say to this conversation I had after the demolition of the 1 year after the demolition of the Babri Masjid in 1993. So exactly on 6th of December, 2 days before that, the SP-BSP government had come into power in UP. The 1992 demolition was considered to be a major act of creating a pan-Hindu, consolidation for the BJP, but it didn't happen.
Mhm.
The OBC Dalit combination created by Mulayam Singh Yadav and Kanshiram, they were able to defeat the BJP in the very first election that happened after the demolition of Babri.
Mhm.
So I asked Ramendra Paramahans, so you were thinking that you will have this pan-Hindu consolidation, but it didn't happen. So he told me something very significant. He said, that हमारा तो इतिहास तो 1920-25 से शुरू हो रहा है. And we have been consistently working on this Hindu Rashtra project. We have had minor gains, we have had heavy losses, we have had some big successes like the demolition of the Babri Masjid, but हमारा काम तो जारी है, काम हमेशा जारी रखते. He said, that we got a taste of power after 25 years after the of the country was formed. 1947, India became independent, and we got the first taste of success, electoral success, in 1967-68. So we were ready to wait, and then we even kind of got rid of our own party and merged it with another party which had no ideological connection with us. So the Sangh Parivar is a very unique, creative phenomenon for its own purpose. I mean, the point is, that is what we have to understand. So what Lalu said is very right, because they have worked on this. And in 1993, after when I was speaking to him, Ramachandra Paramahans also told me that that earlier when we started this movement, Ayodhya was known as the twin city of Faisabad. And it was secularism was its hallmark. But we have changed that now. Ayodhya is a completely Hindu laboratory. And then he had also predicted that, in fact, I have written about this yesterday in my portal, the item. I've said that, that he predicted that, that Ayodhya and Gujarat are the two laboratories that we have, and the whole of India will become a similar laboratory.
How has the media changed since 1992?
Well, media has changed dramatically, but then I think there are still individual voices which are holding on. These voices are true to the vocation, as I would call it.
Yeah.
See, I had this, when this masjid was coming down, though I had written about it that it is going to come down, but when the actually witnessing the way it came down was really very shocking. And I was with Rakesh Sinha, who was also
Indian
very
Express.
enterprise of Express. So we were together on the top floor of the Manas Bhavan, and as the first dome fell, he without me asking or prompting or anything, he wrote on a piece of paper. In fact, I have that piece of paper with me even today. He said, "I, as an Indian, am torn asunder by this vulgar brutality."
Are you reading from that piece of paper, Venkat?
Yeah.
Can you show it on the?
The paper is not with me here. Paper is in Kerala, but I have.
Okay, so tell us again what he said.
He wrote, on a piece of paper, in very bold letters, "I, as an Indian, am torn asunder by this vulgar brutality. As a Hindu, I can never live down the shame of this barbarism. And I think he still holds on to that view, though he may not be very vocal at this point of time.
Well, all I can say now is after listening to the two of you on the destruction of the Babri Masjid 31 years ago, that this was a moment in our history, and that I think as not just as journalists, but all of us have to remember that. But the reason that you two are important is because you've been witness to that moment in history, and you have recorded it, you've given evidence, and you've written it down, or you've done various things about it. But I am grateful to both of you for your time. Ruchira Gupta, Venkatesh Ramakrishnan, thank you for speaking to me on Awaaz South Asia. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti.